The year 2000, I left off the Golden Gate Bridge. I have lived with chronic thoughts of suicide since then. They plague me. They'll never, ever kill me. I have the tools and techniques to stay alive with them. Every time I'm suicidal, every time, I find a mirror, anywhere. I look in the mirror. I say out loud, my thoughts do not have to become my actions. They can simply be my thoughts.
10 years ago, I dated a girl who became suicidal. Fortunately, she didn't take her life. She's still with us today. But at the time, I had no idea how to best help her. I mean, I spoke to my friends, family, support hotlines, and they gave me advice, but the whole experience was very messy on my end. And since then, I've been wanting to speak to somebody who's able to offer professional advice, but also that comes from a place of experience with their own hardships too. Kevin Hines' story is shocking, jaw-dropping, inspiring, and a whole bunch of other adjectives that describe a man who has been through it all and is still here today. He jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge at the age of 19, and miraculously, a seal came over to him and propped him up in the water so that he didn't drown whilst the Coast Guard came to rescue him.
Upon impact, I shattered my T12, L1, L2 lower vertebrae into shards. Had that creature not been there to physically keep me buoyant until the Coast Guard boat arrived, I would not be alive today.
Kevin's story is incredible, and his will to live is second to none. When I was in the United States, I wasn't planning to go to Atlanta, but Kevin was willing to meet me, and I took my opportunity to meet him. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to present to you my guest today, Kevin Hines. And I've noticed just in bits and pieces of either conversation already with you or in previous interviews I've listened to with you, you talk about Margaret in a very, very fun way. Can you explain to me what she means to you?
Oh, wow. First of all, no one's asked me in that way.
Yeah.
What she means to me. No one's ever asked me what she means to me. So I can appreciate that. People have asked me, people have said, you talk about her fondly, and when I write an email to a person who asks if I want to be on their podcast, I always write, please reach out to my lovely wife Margaret.
Yes.
I probably did that with you.
Yeah.
And when I write that every time, I mean it so deeply because she means the world to me. I met her in my third psych ward stay of 10. And it was my third involuntary psych ward stay, forced in against my will. And, here I was in this psych ward, aberrantly self-violent, punching my cement wall in my room until my hands bled, out of control, in denial that I had bipolar disorder, not adequately taking medication, not being honest in therapy, detrimental to myself. And I hated myself. I'm just be very put it on a pin. I self-loathe beyond measure, and Margaret's cousin comes in one day on a. This is a long-winded version, by the way.
No, I'm here for it.
Margaret's cousin comes in one day on a gurney. He can't talk and he can't move. I believe he was 21 years of age. I was 23. He had done some illicit drugs, and I think he had either nearly an overdose or an overdose. And the saddest part about this psych ward was that if you weren't helping yourself, the staff wasn't helping you. They didn't have time. 21, 22, 24 patients. They didn't. If you weren't actively engaging in self-care and following the treatment plans they gave you, you weren't given attention.
Sure.
And every day during breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they would wheel his wheelchair into the cafeteria. They would sit him there. He'd be seated there, and they would bring him his tray full of food. And every day, an hour would go by, and they would take it away full. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He was starving, and everyone was ignoring him. And I didn't think it was right that they would bring him a full tray and take it away full and not engage with him to try to get him to eat it. So every day I would sit with him, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I would tell him stories. Stories about my uncle, stories about my family, stories about me, whatever, stories. And people have told me I'm a good storyteller.
Yeah, you are.
And so, during this time, I'm a month into my stay of the cycle, which is very rare. And it's a 2-month stay because I have to wait for a halfway home for the mentally ill because nobody in my family or friend group were willing to house me. It was either go to the halfway home, which I have to get into, I'm not guaranteed to get in, or be homeless.
Okay. Can I just ask, they weren't willing to house you?
After the psych ward stay.
Why
You
is that?
can't come back.
Why is that?
Because it was my third psych ward, and I think everybody was completely compassion fatigued to my situation.
Okay.
And I don't hold anything against their decision to say that to me at the time, because I just got to be, look, I was a fucking mess. And I hurt a lot of people with my personal pain. And I pushed a lot of people away. And I absolutely, I alienated everybody around me. I had no forever people right there in that moment.
Okay. Is that because you were asking a lot of them on a regular basis, or is it because they weren't, I guess, like seeing change? I think it's the latter. I think it was because they weren't seeing change. I think it was because I was in a great deal of denial. Mm-hmm. I think it was because I was lying to them. I was lying to myself, and everybody was like, "Figure it out on your own." When you say lying to yourself,
yeah.
In what ways were you lying to yourself?
I don't have this disease. Nothing's wrong with me.
Okay.
I felt that this idea of mental illness was having a flaw.
I understand.
I was taking my medication one day and not the next, 7 days, and for 7 days, while binge drinking on alcohol until blackout on psychotropic meds, which could have done severe damage. So I was out of control, and people were not willing to any more than they already had, which they had been there. Yeah. They had been a great support network. They had worked, my dad, my mom, my family, my friends had worked tirelessly for so long without any result of me getting better.
I see.
Right?
I see.
I hear this all the time, all around the world as I travel. What if you can't get someone to accept help? You know, and there's this notion that people are not ready. And that if someone's not ready, then you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink.
Yes.
But so back to Margaret's story. So I'm in the psych ward for a month, and what ended up happening at the tail end of that month is my Uncle George comes in to see me on my mom's side. He's my favorite uncle on my mom's side. He comes in to see me, and he comes in on a special admit to the psych ward against visiting hours.
Okay.
There's nobody else in the cafeteria but me and Uncle George.
Okay.
And he's got a rolled up magazine in his hand. And he's got, and he walks in and he goes, "Kevin, your family and friends can help you until we are blue in the face. But until and when you take 100% responsibility for the fact that you have this disease, bipolar disorder, and you fight tooth and nail to make a difference, nothing's going to change. You'll be in and out of these places for the rest of your life. Is that what you want?" And it was like an epiphany. I was like, "No, Uncle George." He said, "Well, get it together, kid. We're counting on you." And he dropped the magazine on the mic, on the table, like a mic drop.
Right.
And he said, "Read it," and he left.
And that was the rock bottom point?
That was the rock bottom point.
So the respect you had for Uncle George
yes,
was
it was so visceral, so deep.
Wow.
Because he, growing up with Uncle George, he was a no bullshit kind of guy. And he was a funny guy. Is a funny guy. And he leads through pain, any pain he's experienced, with humor. And in the previous psych ward stays, like, my friends would come in and he would be like, "Hey guys, how far along is Kevin on the fucked meter today?" And he was like, "Is he a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 10? And I remember my buddy Dennis going, he's an 11, and I'm like in the room going through psychosis in the psych ward as previously, and like talking to the walls and talking to the garbage can as if they're real people. And they're like, he's an 11, and they're laughing. But that was Uncle George. So this third psych ward stay comes in, he's like, get your shit together, kid. And I realized that can be harsh for some people, but someone had to do it.
Yeah.
And so here I was, and Uncle George leaves, and I go to my room, and I've got this magazine in my hand. I'm like, fuck that guy, You're not my favorite uncle anymore, And I open the magazine. It's a Time Magazine 2004 article on how to fight bipolar disorder, depression, and mental illness with routine and regimen and win. I'm paraphrasing, but anyway. So I'm thinking to myself, why didn't any of my first 3 psychiatrists tell me this might have been a good idea?
Yeah.
So I go to my room, I open the magazine to the article, I read the article twice. It's all about how to build a structured routine, and it gave you some ideas of what to do, so that you could, whatever you're going through, stress, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, come to an even keel.
Through routine
and regimen. And so this is true for anybody trying to achieve goals, anyone trying to thrive in life. If you build a routine, your betterment will come.
It sounds too simple.
It sounds too simple. It sounds too simple.
Is that all?
No, it's not. No, it's not. It sounds too simple.
Okay.
Let me explain. So let me explain how it absolutely works.
Okay.
So it doesn't work for anybody who's not willing to put in the work. So the next day after reading this article, I go to my case manager, Jana, and I said, Jana, listen, I'd like to use your gym facility. And she was like, Kevin, this is a psych ward. And I was like, every psych ward should have a gym. It's in the magazine. And she just laughed at me. And then I was like, wait a minute. I was a WCL wrestling champion.
Okay.
I have physical capability, which so many people do not. I have a room in this psych ward for another month. I got to get to the ground and get to work. I was pre-diabetic and well overweight. I got into my room, and every time I wasn't in any kind of therapy, I was exercising.
And this wasn't part of any regimen?
No. They were doing that in the psych ward. So I ended up using every windowsill, every bed frame. I used my sink for dips. Like I was doing what I knew how to do in sports in high school. Except I was doing plyometrics and isometrics because there were no weights.
Okay.
I was pushing against every surface in that room. I cut my weight significantly. I go to the case manager again. I say, can I talk to the nutritionist? Nutritionist comes to see me, and I say, listen, can you look at my food logs? What am I doing wrong? And she goes, Kevin, you should probably stop ordering 4 very unhealthy meals per 1 meal a day. And see, in the psych ward, if you asked for it, they gave it to you. I was drinking 12 cups of coffee a day. You'd think they would know not to give a psych patient on medication 12 cups of coffee a day. But they want you to be quiet. So they're giving you whatever you want.
Do they want you to be quiet because they are just understaffed and
understaffed, overwhelmed, busy, apathetic?
So they're just in firefighting mode.
Yes.
Which is not help. Well,
no disrespect to the psych ward, but they have a ton going on. A lot of back end stuff with the hospital directors and associations. They're doing the best of their ability. They've got good psychiatrists. They've got great therapists. But here I am lying in therapy. Right, so it's an amalgamation of things going south for the patient who they just need to be as calm as possible.
Were you on medication?
I was on medication. Yep,
Yeah.
I was on medication.
Yeah.
And then you're dealing with trying to find the right medication every potentially 4 days, 5 days. You're switching medication to see what's working properly, which is seemingly too difficult.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So you all these things are occurring. And I realized I can do things. I realized in that moment when Uncle George gave me that article and I read it through and through, I saw some things inside. I was like, maybe I'll give this a shot, right? So I go and I start exercising. I'm starting to feel better. I go and I start eating anti-inflammatory foods that were on their menu but that I wasn't picking. Now I'm eating them I'm feeling better. My gut to brain health is getting better. My brain is feeling better. And then the idea, be honest in therapy. I started telling the truth. I started getting to the root of my problems.
Do you think you were able to get to that train of thinking because you were putting in good fuel into your body?
Yeah.
Do you think that's like
that played a huge role? That was a starting point because before that I was eating 4 pancakes, 2 bagels, extra cream cheese. I was overdoing. I was a glutton.
So the reason why I asked that is because in Melbourne, I'm very heavy on routine.
Yeah.
I love my routine.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of like a militant when it comes to like the structure of at least getting my workout in. I get a workout and a walk in a day because I get all my best ideas when I walk.
Oh, nice.
And I also eat really, really plain whatever food. I eat to live rather than live to eat.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a foodie. I'm just not a foodie.
Okay.
But when I'm on holiday and I'm with my friends and we're going to these cool restaurants or whatever, it's an event and I'll go for it. And you should. I think you should when you're on holiday and you have your moments for it. But I have noticed, because I've been eating like out of routine for now close to like a month.
Yeah.
I just feel shit.
Yeah.
And not shit as in like, oh, I'm losing my muscle or like,
No.
I mean shit as in
Up
like,
here.
like almost like brain fog. Even in some of these conversations that I'm having with like these awesome people that I get to meet and collaborate with.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to like go from A to B with like whether it's a joke or a thought process, and my mom is very big on like what you put into your body in terms of food.
Food is medicine.
I'm as I get older, I'm more and more understanding that is probably the starting point, the easiest starting point to just feeling normal and balanced.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that have an issue with food science. And because, there are so many people, and I've lived multiple times with disordered or eating disorders. As a high school wrestler, it's part of the culture. I was anorexic and bulimic, but I didn't know it. And I would just say to my family, "Oh, I just have the flu," when I had the flu every week. And I'd go and I'd purge right before a wrestling match, and everyone knew I was sick, but me. I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know there was any label for it, and I know we don't want to stick with labels, but my point is this: we have to be aware of people who live with eating disorders and their struggles, because for them, food science can be very dangerous. But we have to also be very honest about the fact that certain foods in this country that are okayed by the FDA, the FDA's sole goal is to make money from food. They don't care about human behavior, human struggles, human strife, and the foods that Americans alone consume on a regular basis, especially in food deserts in this country where people can't afford to eat foods that feed their gut, to feed their mind. Those individuals are struggling. They're literally suffering. And there's more of a propensity for violence. There's all these things can be traced back to the foods that are consumed because of how they affect the brain. Your brain is the single most powerful organ you wield. It's mostly on automatic mode. It controls every action, inaction you take, decision, indecision. If your brain is malfunctioning, there goes the rest of you. But when you are feeding your gut only processed foods, severely processed foods from birth, you're damaging your brain at the cellular level. And here's the thing, what I have to say about my story is when I was an infant, my birth parents, I'm adopted, my birth parents fed me from birth Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola, and sour milk, what they could steal. That ravaged my gut, it damaged my brain. I was by definition mentally ill from the very beginning of my life.
Holy cow. Yeah, that's in like the developmental years.
So I want to be fair to people who live with eating disorders, but I want to be honest about the fact that, like, when Dave Asprey and people like Dr. Daniel Amen, who I'm friends with Dr. Daniel Amen actually, and when people like Max Lugavere talk about brain healthy foods, there's a reason why trying to find a way to eat more of them most of the time, like you do most of the time, can significantly benefit your brain health. And the fact that when you don't, you feel brain fog, there's a scientific reason that's the case. And I don't always eat well. I've got a gut. I used to be in the best peak physical condition of my life multiple times in my life. I have an issue with cravings of foods that poison my system. It's a cyclical kind of behavioral issue. I admit it. I'm self-aware about it. I'm working on it.
Is it a like very common when I talk to my friend about this all the time, like the comfort sugar, but out of stress. So and especially you're a busy dude.
Yeah.
So the more you take on, which is self-esteem increasing because you're like, what else can I do?
Yeah.
The more the stress just comes with that.
For me, it's less than stress and more of a craving.
Okay.
So I'll be like, I want something sweet, and then I'll buy it, and then I'll eat it, and then I'll overdo it,
Right.
Or for me, it's like, I have a body-based intolerance to gluten and dairy.
Okay. Yeah.
I really do. Like I have and this is where you define it. I have an immunodeficiency caused initially by medication that has a connection to the foods I eat and how they affect my system. So when I eat gluten or dairy, I get hives all over my elbows and my knees. My face breaks out into red blisters. I get redness under my eyes, and my skin explodes, and my skin integrity fails. Okay?
It's
When I
extreme.
It's very extreme.
Jeez.
In 2018, I developed secondary burns from head to toe without a fire. What they determined was I was on the tipping point of Stevens-Johnson syndrome. It felt like knives and needles were coming from my bones through my skin everywhere for 38 weeks, 24 hours a day. I skyrocketed into a manic episode for 2 years.
Oh my God.
When you have mania over a period of 2 weeks, what they told my wife, was that it was akin to brain damage. They looked my wife in the eyes and said, "We don't know if he'll ever come back from this mania. We don't know if he'll ever be normal again."
Induced from dairy or
Induced from the medication
Okay.
that was being uncomplimented by the foods I was eating. So my body was massively inflamed. I was in danger of dying.
Yeah.
So a couple things happened. A company saw my burns online, Eczema Honeycomb, and sent me a naturopath eczema and psoriasis cream that is totally 100% natural. They sent it my way and said, give it a shot for 3 months. I topically put it on for 3 months. The burns cleared. The pain did not.
Okay.
The pain lasted for years. I still get it sometimes. Knives and needles from your bones through your skin across your whole body. It was brutal. It was brutal. There were times I couldn't walk. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Developed 5 simultaneous diagnosed sleep disorders.
Was this, sorry, what year was this?
2018,
Oh
19,
my
and
gosh,
20.
this was recent.
Yeah, it was very bad.
Yeah, how much of this, or how much of the either autoimmune responses or just responses to medication was happening around the time where you jumped off the bridge?
So I don't know because that's too far back to look, and I didn't have the doctors to describe what was going on now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
In this situation, because of the inflammation, I almost died. And I think people in my family and friends group downplay what really happened. I try to explain it to them, but it sounds so unbelievable. But it was very much a chronic illness and chronic pain that was absolutely brutal. I wanted to kill myself every day. I never wanted to die off the Golden Gate Bridge when I jumped. I believed I had to because of psychosis. This physical pain from the burns, I wanted to die every moment of every day.
So that was worse?
It was worse, way worse.
Because it's just ongoing.
It's ongoing, it's insurmountable, it's unrelenting, and so I made a decision with my wife. I said, I'm not going to attempt, I'm not going to kill myself. What I am going to do is distract myself. So when I could walk, I was speaking. When I wasn't speaking, I was exercising. Then it turned into unhealthy exercise. I was exercising 16 times a day because it was the only thing that mitigated the physical pain. I was causing a different kind of pain to distract myself from the unrelenting physical pain caused by the inflammation. So I was out of control. I wasn't sleeping. I was hallucinating almost 24 hours a day. And by that I mean I was functioning, but I was seeing things and hearing things that didn't exist anymore with me, which I'd experienced before, but now it's like on 10 times the effect.
Right.
Because my body was so damaged and my mind was so damaged, and I wasn't sleeping. It's not, insomnia causes psychosis all by itself. Add all the other stuff I was going through, I was once again a wreck. And they had to take me off all psychiatric meds because they didn't know which med caused it.
And that would have had its own...
When they took me off of the meds, that situation occurred in a 24-hour period. They said, you have to be off all meds or you're going to die. They took me off all psych meds, asthma meds. I have exercise-induced asthma. It's really, really bad. It's been bad since kindergarten. And they took me off all allergy meds. In one day, I had a 48-hour withdrawal-based psychosis.
Can I zoom out for a
Yeah,
second?
sure.
Yeah, because now
We got to go back to Margaret, by the way.
Yes. If I zoom out from like all of the information I've learned about you
Yeah.
in the last couple of years and then tonight,
Yeah.
because of the very rocky start
Yeah.
to just your life,
Yeah.
and then from that comes, from what I'm understanding, is all types of alcohol, drugs, looking for ways to, in the most simple way to put it, like help the pain. And it gets to this place.
So
of
medications, but I never did any illicit drugs.
Okay.
I binge drank until blackout a handful of times.
Okay.
While on psychotropic meds,
Okay.
which medication is for psychosis.
Right. Okay. And then it gets
Prescribed meds.
and then it gets to the moment of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
And then after that, the pain just keeps punching you in the face.
Yeah.
But what I'm noticing is there's a subtext here, and I please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm noticing is the subtext outside of the rough upbringing or the rough start is pharmaceuticals or potentially like this like medication. Is that wrong? Is that too simplified?
I think it's too simplified because a traumatic infancy, situation where I was being fed terrible foods, and then birth parents on drugs after they had me, not before, and then being taken away from my birth parents, placed in foster care, bouncing around in foster care. My only full-blooded brother dies. We both get bronchitis. He dies. I survive. So I was already a survivor. I go into a great foster home. It's transitional. Deborah Hines comes and sees me, decides to go to Patrick, Kevin Hines, and say, let's take this kid in, he needs us. They take me in. They made me their son. They are my mom and dad. They saved my life. They took in 3 kids from 3 separate households. They saved all of our lives. We all came with baggage. We all came with brain struggles from birth, right? But we had a great childhood. We had an amazing adolescence. Things were going great until and when my brain broke.
Okay.
And when my brain broke was 17 and a half years of age in high school, before food science became readily available. But I wasn't eating poorly. I wasn't eating bad foods. My mom and family fed us at the time, we thought were very healthy, sustainable. It's subjective, but
For what was available at the time. Yeah.
And it wasn't like the food groups on the pyramids. We were eating vegetables, we were eating lean meats, and we were eating some starches. Like that was the typical thing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. In looking back, I don't think in hindsight that was an issue. But at 17, my brain broke in front of my entire high school audience, 1,200 people, and in that moment, having this complete mental breakdown, I was falling apart at the seams before this. But here I was on this stage performing in a show, and my brain has a complete mental breakdown in front of 1,200 people, and eventually they take me to see my first psychiatrist. I'm put on medications. We believe the doctor put me on too many different meds at the same time. He turned out to be on methamphetamines the entire time.
Jesus.
He treated me and his other patients. And, did
I just miss the
yeah, you did. But it's okay.
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. So he turned out to, he ended up dying by suicide.
Jesus.
By way of a drug overdose. And he was considered one of the best in his field, right? So all these things are happening, and it starts me on this path. But at 19 years of age, while on medication, but not taking it adequately, and while not being honest in therapy, and while, pushing away people in my life who loved me, I ended up, because of psychosis, because of voices in my head, obviously telling me I had to die, I left off the Golden Gate Bridge.
Okay.
I can't say what the exact thing led to that, what was. I can say this, though. I was very ill. My thought process was awry, and I was in desperate pain. I call it lethal emotional pain. Because it's the common denominator between anybody and everybody who dies by suicide.
Okay.
Everybody who dies by suicide is in lethal emotional pain. Whether they have just found out that they're going to prison for 50 years and they're like, I'm not doing that, or whether they have lost the love of their life and they're like, I can't handle this, or whether they live with a diagnosed mental illness and they die from depression. It's all lethal emotional pain, all of it. I think rather than looking back, I want to help people who watch and listen to this move forward. And that brings me back to that routine that occurred in that third psych ward stay, where I met Margaret, which brings us full circle. That routine that I started, that I built myself, exercise, education as to my diagnosis, educating the people I love about what I'm going through so they understand how to help me. Eating more healthily foods, which I do really do most days, but I struggle with sometimes.
Right.
Therapy of all kinds. From music therapy, which I learned in that psych ward, to art therapy, which I learned in that psych ward in the third stay, to cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, which I still do on teletherapy even now, to blue wave light box technology therapy, which I wake up to every morning, to meditation, to mindfulness exercises, which I do every day, to using coping strategies that I know benefit my mind, body, and brain. When I have suicidal thoughts, which I still have today, I've had them for 23 years, they're chronic. You see me right in front of you, right? I haven't done it, right?
No, you haven't.
I haven't attempted in 23 years.
And you hold it together very well.
September 25th of the year 2000, I left off the Golden Gate Bridge. I have lived with chronic thoughts of suicide since then. They plague me. They'll never, ever kill me. I have the tools and techniques to stay alive with them. Every time I'm suicidal, every time, I find a mirror, anywhere. I look in the mirror. I say out loud, my thoughts do not have to become my actions. They can simply be my thoughts. They don't have to own, rule, or define what I do next. Thus, I never have to attempt or die in the first place. Where it used to get from me to going to planning the death, now I get from the thought to the mirror.
Brilliant.
After I look in that mirror, I turn to the first person I see, whether I know them from Adam or not. And I say 4 simple but very effective words. I need help now. The difference between me and someone who dies by suicide is that I don't stop saying I need help now and then describing why I need help until someone's willing to help me or listen to me.
Incredible.
I take complete responsibility for my psychosis, my depression, my mental illness, if that's what we're going to call it, and my voices in my head telling me I have to die. I don't listen to those voices. I do not give them credence anymore as I used to. I do not allow them to take me. And that resolve and true resilience can be learned. I travel the world upwards of 300 days a year, sharing my story, teaching people the art of wellness, and how to be resilient in the face of pain. I think in this country and around the world, even in Australia, everywhere, the Surgeon General just said it. He said, there's not necessarily a lack of resilience in the world, but the world has changed. With the advent of social media, which we do for good, but not everybody else does, you have so many people writing to other people they either know from their peers groups, from their school, or people they don't know, and you have people writing to human beings who have mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and fiancés and wives and husbands and loved ones and friends, and writing to them, you should just go kill yourself. And people who live in excruciating, lethal emotional pain see that, then they may see it multiple times, and then their lives and situations they're dealing with overwhelm them, and they see it one more time, and they take their life. It's appalling. It's disgusting and deplorable that a high school student who walks by this kid every day goes home, goes online, and tells them to take their life, and then they do. There need to be repercussions for those actions. Criminal repercussions. And in the UK, they're working on that right now.
Oh, really?
Where you don't get to say, go kill yourself, then someone does, and you get off scot-free. No more.
Even for children? Even for children that send that? Because that's the most difficult part of it.
It's the most difficult part of it. But look, people need to understand our actions have recourse.
Of course.
And if we are going to tell someone to take their life, we better be ready for the consequences. Because that was someone's daughter.
Yeah.
That was someone's son. And they're gone. And their family can never have them back. That's as real as the hands in front of my face.
100%.
And just to, but as we round this out, that third psych ward stay where I met Margaret, I'll tell you what she means to me, because I want to bring that back.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, bring it up.
She's my everything. I turned around in the psych ward when she visited the first day, and for me it was love at first sight. I looked into her almond eyes, and I knew she'd be the rest of my life. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. I didn't tell her that. That'd be awkward.
Might have scared her off.
She gave me a first date eventually after the psych ward. And it was the worst date you can ever imagine.
Okay.
Have you seen the YouTube video about it?
No, I haven't.
No, you should.
No,
you should watch it.
Okay.
I got lobster sauce all over my shirt. I got lemon juice in her left eye. Like a stream of it just continued like a fire hose. I got boiling butter on her chest between her blouse. Then I tried to pat it down right here on a first date. It was a mess. And I don't know how it happened, but she gave me a second date.
There you go.
We're 16 years married, 19 years together. She's my best friend, the love of my life, and literally means the world to me. And without her, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I wouldn't have the understanding that each of us can be 1,000 times greater than the worst thing we've ever done.
It's beautiful.
And maybe it's the fact that, when people write, just go kill yourself, maybe the answer isn't jail or detention centers, but maybe the answer is education. Maybe they have to go through training to understand what they've just done. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe it's not something where you reprimand them and stop their life or whatever, but maybe you just sit them down in some kind of educational system and help them understand what they've just been a part of. Because maybe they weren't the only one that wrote that to that one kid. Maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 of them did the same thing, and then the person took their life, which happens. I've gone to the high schools. I've met the kids. I've met the people where it's happened. So maybe there's a way for us to preemptively teach kids before they get to the age of being on social media, which obviously varies, but maybe we get some information to these kids to help them understand their actions have consequences, and that the kids they are around, even if they don't like them, they don't have to hurt them.
Sure. I actually think that strategy makes the most sense, rather than having to learn or have that information rush in once something has gone wrong.
Before,
Which means very young.
very young.
I think one of the beautiful things about technology is it can give us all of this good stuff, like this conversation.
Yeah.
But it goes without saying that with the good comes this incredible bad, and unfortunately, I think we're just in this transition period of the technology moving so fast that we can't fill in the gaps in the meantime.
We can't catch up.
So we're feeling the pain now, but I'm an optimist, and I do think
I am too.
I think like it's the most practical thing to start educating at a much younger age, which is a scary idea, but
it's scary. A lot of parents don't want it because they don't believe their children would ever experience that. But what they don't understand is like 7 to 10-year-olds are dying by suicide more now than ever before in the history of the world.
Mm.
How does a 7-year-old know how to take their lives?
I actually think that's a good opportunity for me to ask one final question just on that, because I don't want to take up too much. I've already taken up a lot of your time, but I do want to ask you on that. The whole thing around not knowing what to do when someone is suicidal. I have a very personal experience with this. I lived a very fortunate first 22 years where I didn't come into contact with anybody who was suicidal. In fact, the idea of suicide was such a foreign thing to me, which is incredibly lucky. It's testament. I always pay it back to like my mom and my dad for like putting me in these environments that were very safe. There are positives and negatives to that, because you got to learn eventually. But I dated a girl who ended up being suicidal, and she's still with us. And I'm very, very grateful and happy about that. But at the time, I was the closest person to her, and I didn't have the tools on what to do. I wanted to help. Every part of me wanted to help. I spoke to as many people. We have a hotline called Beyond Blue in Australia.
And I know it well, yeah.
Yeah. That was just like the only thing I knew, like professional, because I could talk to my friends, but they didn't know either.
Yeah.
So I used my resources to find what I could find, but at the end of the day, it was a scrappy kind of work through the dark, and it had a good outcome. But I want to ask you point blank, should someone find themselves in the same situation I was in, or just someone gets a text or a call from a friend or a distant friend, anybody who's like, I'm struggling and I need help, what is the best course of action?
I think the best course of action is to try, if you can, to physically sit next to them, hold space for them, and listen. Listen to understand, not to respond. Ask them to tell you everything on their minds. And then when they're done getting it out, say, what do you need from me right now? What can I do for you in this moment that would actually help you? And say, I don't know, I need to die. You know, say, let's just sit here and breathe. Let's just sit here, and why don't you follow me? We're going to do, if you're willing, 20 to 30 resonance breaths. In 4 seconds to the nose, hold 4 seconds, release 6 to 8 seconds. Just do that with me, would you please? When they're done, look them in the eyes and say, we're all going to die. None of us have cracked the code to immortality. Let's give you time plus hard work so you can find hope again, so things can change. I think that people need to recognize that suicide does not take away the pain. It makes it impossible for things to ever get better. Pain is inevitable. It's coming for all of us if it hasn't already. Suffering can be optional. a choice.
Mm.
I'm not talking about war-torn country suffering. I'm not talking about children in abusive homes. They're suffering. I'm talking about the individual who is in lethal emotional pain, whose situation can change with hard work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the individual who has lost hope for whatever reason, but hope is not intangible. It always exists. It's a matter of perception and perspective. If you believe it's there, it's there. If you have no hope, if you feel lost, find your why so you can find your how you can survive. And to find that why, that means you have to find a purpose. And a purpose-driven life is a life lived, meaning you're alive to live it. When you have no purpose, you have no how. If you can, I'll put it this way. People who volunteer for a cause, a good cause, to help other people in whatever way, are 63% more mentally healthy than those who do not. So if you feel you have no purpose, get online, find something that gives you a spark of passion, so find some organization that needs your help, and get to work. Because every day you do something good for them, and you see the outcome, the result of someone being helped by your good work, scientifically your brain feels better. Then you have purpose. That's your why. This is how you stay alive.
Beautiful. Right.
Nice to meet you, brother.
It's
I wish I could talk to you like all day long. You're awesome.
I could listen to you. I feel like I could run a marathon. I feel like
this is great.
Everything is just kind of like all the neurons are firing.
Yeah,
I started seeing a therapist about 2.5 years ago, and again, it's just going in naively but optimistically. I thought, okay, you go something that you're trying to solve. You go there and then it's solved.
Yeah.
But what I'm learning is that it doesn't work like that. You deal with that for the rest of your life, and I think you're a living testament to like the mental fortitude of dealing with it on a day-to-day basis at such an extreme level for the rest of your life, and it's very inspiring. And I think you're very easily the pinnacle of like mental strength, but also perspective. And dude, again, it's just been a pleasure.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Kevin.
Is this one have both of us?
Yes.
Hey, be here tomorrow.
Oh, fuck yeah.
And I'll give you a shirt. I'll give you one of these shirts. And every day after that, and that's Herbert the Sea Lion saved my life. So find your why so you can find your how.
Amazing. Thank you, dude.
Have a good night, brother.
Likewise.
All right. Thank you very much.